Chapter 17, page 161, No Detail Too Small. "Are you going to tell me?" Edmund asked. Instead of answering, Dupin sat at the table. From his pocket he removed a string and set it before him. Next to that he placed a card, as well as the message Edmund had found. Finally, he laid out the 2 white buttons. In the light of the candle they glowed like pearls. "Edmund," he said, "you must listen with the utmost care. As I link detail to detail, I shall be speaking as much to myself as to you. No detail is too small. Is that understood?" "Yes, but—" "Then do not interrupt me." Dupin took a deep breath. "A while ago," he began in a voice trembling with excitement, "your mother is abandoned by your stepfather, Ratchet. Not just abandoned, he steals her money. I wouldn't be surprised if she were not the only one he so abused. Ratchet has used your mother's money to insinuate himself into the regard of one of Mrs. Powers, a woman well placed in the city of Providence. Both vicious and cautious, he has taken on the name of William Arnold. Arnold is an old, respected family name in this city. In time, your mother discovers that he has come here, to Providence. Seeking a return of her money, as well as a divorce, not obtainable in England, she sails in search of him, leaving you in the charge of your twin sister, your Aunt Prue. After not hearing from your mother for a year, your aunt suddenly received a message from her. A message, as opposed to a letter, brought moreover by a stranger, tells me that your mother is under restraint, perhaps even held captive by Ratchet. The urgency of your mother's message, the very means of delivery, causes your aunt to come immediately to Providence, bringing you and your sister with her. Once here, she commences her search. Do I make sense so far? I suppose. Not long after your arrival, Dupin raced on, your aunt asks the Providence Bank to help her in search by offering a reward. The notice posted in the saloon proves she spoke to Mr. Poley. Throck, you remember him, Edmund nodded, sees that notice and engages with your aunt to find your mother. The man in the saloon confirms this. Throck himself told me as much himself this morning. Thinking I was after the reward, he even tried to warn me off. Meddle at your peril, he informed me. A distraction. Meanwhile, Dupin continued, at the bank, Mr. Poley talks about your aunt and her affairs. The workers in his office are over here. One of these is Mr. Randolph Peterson. Who's he? Edmund asked. The accountant who published the advertisement in the newspaper. Dupin pointed to the card that lay before him. Edmund got up off the bed to read it. Mr. Randolph Peterson, Hotel American House. Ratchet, Dupin continued, must have seen that notice too, and thus learned of your aunt's arrival. Wishing to see if she knows his false name, he places his advertisement in the paper. Naturally, he checks the paper to see that it is there. In so doing, he sees Peterson's advertisement, which appears the same day. Ratchet, deciding he must do something about your aunt, approaches Peterson. What could be easier? They live in the same place. Peterson not only tells Ratchet about your aunt's dealings at the bank, he mentions the California gold. At the bank? Edmund said. Exactly. Ratchet is deeply interested in both pieces of news, Dupin intoned, as if he were in a trance. Remember, he has met Mrs. Powers and, through her, Mrs. Whitman, whom he is determined to marry. To do so, he needs 2 things. Page 164. He must rid himself of his legal wife, your mother. Divorcing her will not do. Mrs. Powers will not condone it. He also needs money to appear a worthy prospect. The coming of your aunt with the 2 of you, in conjunction with the arrival of the California gold and the willingness of Peterson to involve himself in a robbery, work together in Ratchet's mind. He constructs a monstrous plot. To begin with, Peterson becomes his partner. Dupin stand for a moment, began to pace. Edmund watched him intensely. It is easy, Dupin at last continued, for Peterson to learn from Mr. Pulley where your aunt has taken a room. The first thing Ratchet does is engage a room opposite of you, Dupin pointed out the window. Then he schemes to get hold of your aunt. You told me that just before she disappeared, she was to meet a man, correct? Edmund nodded. Ratchet or Peterson. They lure your aunt away with the promise of information about your mother. Now Ratchet holds both your mother and your aunt, and he determines to murder your mother. Why not destroy the aunt too? Ratchet, a cautious man, does nothing in excess. Do what must be done, no more. Indeed, I'd wager that it is Peterson, not Ratchet, who actually does the deed. In any case, it is my belief that your mother and aunt discover the plot to thwart such a despicable plan, to protect you children, the sisters, identical twins, exchange places, and thus confound the murderers. For indeed, one of the sisters is killed and thrown into the bay. Ratchet and Peterson believe they have killed your mother. In fact, your aunt has sacrificed herself for motherhood. But on the night of the robbery, while Ratchet and Peterson are otherwise occupied, the surviving sister escapes. Ever since, she has been trying to find your sister and, no doubt, you. Terrified, grief-stricken, hardly knowing where to go, she wanders the city in search of her children. Poor woman, she is all but mad. No, don't say a word, Dupin cried. I now return to Ratchet and Peterson. Why do they desire to secure your aunt? Because with her gone, you and your sister will be left alone. With the patience of Satan, the two men wait in that room opposite yours for one of you to leave. Ah, but from later events, the breaking into the room, we know they have a key. Why not use it then? Because the window is the fastest way to secure the child. After all, who knows when the one who leaves will return? Secrecy, mystification, speed, all essential. In any case, it is you, Edmund, who at last goes out for the food. Now then, did you not say you were detained on the street that night? Yes. By whom? An old man. How did you know he was old? He acted old, and... Page 166. Dupin slammed his hand on the table, making Edmund jump. He had white hair. In fact, it is young Mr. Peterson who detains you so that Ratchet can steal your sister. Why? The bank, Edmund, the bank. To get the gold in the Providence Bank. There is an air shaft in that bank vault where the shipment has been placed. It leads to the roof. The roof abuts the hill behind it. There is an alley alongside. Drive a carriage into the alley, and it is a small matter to climb upon the roof and reach the opening. However, while no grown person can go down through the shaft, a child, Edmund, a child, you or your sister's size, could be lowered down by rope. Down the shaft? Edmund gasped, horrified. Exactly. And I have no doubt that if it had been your sister who had gone to the store, they would have taken you and done the same. Edmund paled. Dupin crossed to the table, picked up the piece of string that lay there, and dangled it before Edmund's eyes. I found this in the vault, he said, and compared it with the bell ropes in the Unitarian Church. It is not string, it is a piece of strong rope. Individually, the bars of gold are not that heavy. A child, in this case your sister, could place them one by one into a basket that is lowered with her, and then all are hauled away. Do you not see, Edmund? The woman in this story, the women who are not here, are everywhere. Indeed, your sister herself has a means of thwarting these men. A plucky girl. She takes it from that story she reads, Hansel and Gretel. Dupin flung the string aside and scooped up the buttons. Your sister leaves a button everywhere she is taken. Peterson, with the bragging vanity of the thief, shows me one he himself found in the bank, little knowing that I know. The robbery done, Dupin continued, the men hide your sister in the abandoned cemetery behind Mrs. Whitman's house, in the mausoleum. This second button here proves that. Ratchet, pretending to be Arnold, has been to the house often in pursuit of Mrs. Whitman. He believes the mausoleum is never visited. In any case, All has gone as planned, except the woman they think is your aunt has escaped. Are they greatly concerned? No. What can you, aunt,